qualifying. Same goes here.
soul. Steel toes on, boots in the gravel, heartland truth on every channel. Open Bible, flag on the wall. We say what we believe when we don't talk at all. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. We back the bad, we guard the border. We love our guns and law and order. They try to shame every word we say, but we don't bow down, we just press play. This is red, white, and raise hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rebel from the back road to the bell. Hey, we won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raise hell. You can cancel the show, but not the crowd. We're still here, still talking loud. Hand of the free on every spell. Hit that mic, host, let the truth ring out. This is red, white, and raised hell. Cowboy hat, church bell, can't scare us into silence. We were born to rail from the back road to the beltway. We won't fade, we won't fail. Proud, loud, standing tall. Red, white, and raised hell.
All right, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for being with us. It is a Friday, and as you can see by the graphic that we did at the top, it is a free-for-all Friday. There are too many news stories to focus and isolate on just one or two today. It has been a crazy, crazy week. I really can't wait to get the final touches put on the Sunday morning briefing, in which we talk about everything that happened in the previous week and what you need to be prepared for the week to come. But today we're going to do our best, especially just in this first hour, to cover as much of it as possible. As you can see on screen, hour number 2 is going to be dedicated to a conversation I had with Dr. Everett Piper. Dr. Piper just went all out in response to some of the critics and some of the anti-Zionist and anti-Semitic people ripping Mike Huckabee for declaring that without the Jews, there would be no United States. They're flipped out over that. That's not America first. It's the other way around. Without the United States, there would be no Jews. Well, you know what? The reality is they literally go hand in hand. This country is founded so much on the Old Testament and on the Jewish people. It was just a fascinating story, conversation. One of my favorite chats that I've ever had with Dr. Piper. We also dove into Charlie Kirk, and not really as much about the evidence in this evidentiary hearing that is going on right now, but just really more on the nut jobs who are still fixated on the conspiracies that are making most of them rich. Talking about people like specifically like Candace Owens. As a matter of fact, let me throw this up just super quick. Here we go. Yeah, take a look at this. This is just a great summary. I don't know who did it, but it's just, if you've been watching the coverage of the evidentiary hearing, which of course precedes the trial, if there is to be a trial, this is just such a great summary. Tyler Robinson's mom, Tyler did it. Tyler's dad, Tyler did it, because you realize they turned him in, right? Tyler's boyfriend, whose testimony was key in this evidentiary hearing, his conversations with cops. Tyler did it. Cops. Tyler did it. all of the evidence, including the handwritten, not typed, but in his own handwritten note to his boyfriend, trans furry lover, Lance Twiggs. The evidence says Tyler did it. Tyler himself, audibly and in writing, said, I did it. But there she is, Candace Owens. No, you didn't. You kind of can't. I don't know how you argue that. I don't know what you say to that in all seriousness. I don't know what the proper way to view that is. I can tell you this. This is how I viewed it. I posted this literally about a half an hour ago, maybe less, as I was preparing the show. I got a little bit sidetracked because I really wanted to get this posted. Last night, I saw the actual letter, the handwritten note in Tyler Robinson's own handwriting that he left for his boyfriend. And then he texted him and said, hey, you should look under there, under the keyboard, because you're going to see. And let me throw this up here too, as long as we're doing this. Yeah, I like dramatic music. Yeah, it's not great. Mute the music there, but you'll get the point here. So this is can this be enlarged or not? Let me try, because what it does, it's so weird when you try to hit the the enlarge. It enlarges the whole page, not the image that you're trying to enlarge. It's really annoying as hell. But be that as it may, I'll read it to you. If you are reading this, this is written in his own handwriting, Tyler Robinson's handwriting. This is written. Oh, see, now it's doing. Yeah. Let me just do it another way. I'm just going to do it in a still photo if I can. Yeah. All right. That's not going to be the most optimal way to do this. So let me just read this to you from a still photo that I have of this. So it's written to not Lance, but quote, Luna. Luna was Lance Twiggs' online name, his furry alter ego or whatever. These people were playing fantasy games in real life. Okay. This is what happens. This is that alternate universe, this weird dark web type stuff, in which they, like I said, pretend to be things that they're not. It's the entirety of what this trans agenda is. I mean, people are pretending to be what they're not, and living, alternate lifestyles and living, fantasy lifestyles and so forth. And then sometimes fantasy intersects with reality. And it's clear that, Tyler Robinson, by his own words, which I'm about to read, was very much caught up in that his trans furry Luna lover, who was also his live-in roommate, was not being treated fairly by the likes of Charlie Kirk, who routinely and plainly stated what this was. These are psychological impairments, psychological disorders. These are people who, basically have been, either they have a psychological disorder or they have been just drawn in by the, social psychosis that has been created for so many. This is Charlie talked about at length, a lot of other things too, but among them, obviously, this protect the children mantra was one of Charlie's key things. Prove me wrong. What they're doing to children by chemically sterilizing them, chemically castrating them, putting them on all of these cross hormones, and then surgically mutilating their bodies. Let's stop that, was Charlie's message. And obviously people like this who played in those games and who were caught up in that social contagion, that social psychosis, couldn't take it anyway. So Luna, he wrote to his trans whatever lover, if you are reading this, I'm sorry, it's a little bit blurry, so I got to try to enlarge it on my phone where I'm reading it from. If you are reading this per my text, because he sent him a text message saying, yo, bruh, check under the keyboard. There's something there for you. This is what it was. If you are reading this per my text, then I am so sorry. I left the house this morning on a mission and sent an auto text. I am likely dead or facing a lengthy prison sentence. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I took it. I don't know if I will or have succeeded, but I hope to make it home to you. I wish we could have lived in, and that's where it's cut off. It's not where the note ends. It's just where the image ends. You want to know why? Because this image, the one that I'm talking about, I'm still going to try to show it to you if I can, even though the video part of it, like I said, makes it a little bit clunky and clumsy. But that text, that letter was not supposed to be shown to the court. It was accidentally aired on television by a television cameraman who was kind of scanning and showing some of the evidence that was, being presented in court. And the camera moved to this, and it wasn't supposed to. The quickly cut away, but too late. It's on the internet, and boom, freeze frame, screenshot. Here we are. So yeah, I guess I can show it to you in this image a little bit better, because this one's not going to be the video that I made, which was trying to prove a point. So yeah, you can definitely see that one better. And the reason for me, really wanting to show you this in as clear as manner as possible, as you can see, this isn't a typed note. Some of the conspiracy theorists, some of the nut jobs, we're saying anybody could have done that. Anybody could have typed out a note and put it under the keyboard. It's all part of the grand conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. This is his printing. According to the testimony presented, this is his own handwriting. And again, as you can see, the letter cuts off there. And let me make, yeah, that is full screen. Okay. The letter cuts off there before the second paragraph really kicks in. It just says, I wish we could have lived in. And you can imagine probably a lot of places that might have gone. So the video that I made, like I said, was to make a point. I showed that, but then at the very end, and it kind of got away from me there. So I'll just play this again for you now. After reading all of that, I left the house this morning on a mission. I had a chance to take out Charlie Kirk. But it was Israel. Okay. I'm sorry. I just said the Candace Owens mockery of humanity now has got to end. It's got to be over. This wasn't even the trial. There is so much more that the, powder, if you will, that the prosecution is keeping dry. They didn't have to present all of their evidence. This is just, which is also a little bit bizarre, a little bit odd. 5 full days of an evidentiary hearing. 5 days. The goal here is just to say to the judge, here you go, sir. This is enough to have a trial for, right? We're not so devoid of evidence and facts and information that would make this easy for you to just dismiss the charges. Oh, this is clearly not enough to go to trial on. Usually that takes an hour. I mean, in all seriousness, if the prosecution spent an hour up there in front of a judge saying, well, judge, we've got a confession in person. We've got a confession in handwriting. We've got his roommate and best friend admitting to what he wrote and what he said he did. We've got DNA evidence. We've got his fingerprints and his DNA all over a rifle. We've got video of him on the campus multiple times on that day. I mean, just list. That's enough right there. You could just stop right there. Evidentiary hearing over. Yeah, there's enough for a trial here. We'll let the defense contest all of that evidence. They can contest the rifle. They can contest the DNA. They can contest the video of him on campus. That's what you do in a trial. But yeah, certainly there's enough here. Why the hell this is taking 5 days is beyond my comprehension. Don't understand it. Don't like it, to be honest with you. But even for 5 days of presenting evidence, they're still keeping that proverbial powder dry. Even with that, there is so much more that they will actually present in a trial, in a full trial. And so with just the evidentiary hearing information, Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly and Sean Ryan and the rest of this, massive podcast bro crew that is out there making so much money by bringing in millions of impressionable and psychologically vulnerable people, bringing them in to say that Israel did it with the help of France and with the help of scores, and obviously with the help of Lance Twiggs. Lance Twiggs is testifying to his own conversations with the defendant, Tyler Robinson. He was in on it with Israel too. Tyler's parents were in on it too, working with Israel, because they're the ones who called the police and said, yeah, we see what just happened to Charlie Kirk, and we see it's our son that's on the video there. They convinced him to turn himself in. Tyler Robinson apparently is in on it too, because he's allowing himself to be tried for murder with a death penalty specification. The stupidity, the vapidness, the insanity, the downright evil of putting Charlie Kirk's family, his widow, his children are too little to understand this now, but when they are older and they see what was done and said about their father, and about their father's killer being, what Candace Owens said yesterday about, I was about to say about their father's killer being aided and assisted. Candace Owens actually said on her ridiculous show, I think it must have been Wednesday because it was shown yesterday, she actually said that she will assist the defense. She said, I have proof that all of that stuff is fake. And if you guys want to come see me, I'll give it to you. So holy crap. She's literally the quote unquote best friend of Charlie Kirk, which is a lie that she has repeated over and over and over again. The best friend of Charlie Kirk wants to help set his killer free, despite the mountains of evidence that, again, are just what they're presenting for the evidentiary hearings. So it has to end. The insanity of what they're doing again, but it's not going to end, because you know what drives so much? There's an old cliche and an old adage, and I don't know where it came from. I should, because I like a good origin story. I don't know who first said that money is the root of all evil. I don't think it was biblical. It certainly wasn't. But somebody basically, it's a widespread belief that the desire for things, the desire for money, the desire for property value, et cetera, drives people to commit all kinds of evil crimes. Well, there is a lot of money being made. A lot of money being made by the likes of Candace and Tucker, and because people are people. Look, you want to know why streaming services exist right now? Streaming services, streaming television shows, streaming series, streaming documentaries by the thousands and thousands. Stuff that never would have made it onto television back in the days of network TV. Like when I was growing up, for example. You want to know why there's a massive, massive market for these streaming services and shows and documentaries and so forth? Because the appetite among the people for that kind of stuff is off the charts. People love that stuff. They flock to it by the millions, even if it sucks. People are like, did you see that story about that mother that killed her kid? Did you see that story about, or was alleged to have, or what have you? I mean, so many, the Slender Man. I mean, I could just sit here and if I wanted to waste time, sit here and try to think about all these things. People love a good true crime story, and if there's conspiracy involved in it, holy cow. Do you know what probably the two most famous murder trials in American history, at least in the last century, in the 20th century? Do you know what they were? The Manson trial from 1969 and the Helter Skelter murders, and the O.J. Simpson trial in 1995. Okay? those were probably in the 20th century. And I might even be able to say up until now, into 26 years into this century. But we'll just focus on that for a moment. What made those particular trials and cases so just like crack, like addictive to the public wasn't just the killings, it was the suggested conspiracies behind them, and particularly the Manson one. The whole thing, for those who don't know the Manson story, the Charles Manson murders, and the theory put forth by the prosecution, the evidence presented, the testimony of countless numbers of witnesses who were either in the family, the Manson family, as the followers called themselves, or at least, they became referred to in popular culture. But they did. They called themselves a family. They lived together in the commune. They're on Spahn Ranch outside of Los Angeles. And anyway, so all of that evidence, or a ton of that evidence anyway, was presented to show the conspiracy. It wasn't just a bunch of radical drug-crazed nuts out there killing rich people in some of Hollywood's most luxurious and protected neighborhoods. It wasn't just a murder spree for fun. What grabbed the nation, and for what has it been since 1969? The trial, I think the conviction was in 72. So what's the math there? 53 years-ish? 54 years? 54 years. It still engrosses people. In fact, my wife just showed me something yesterday saying, Bob, here's a story, because she knows how I am with this. She said, here's a story or a show you might like. And what the heck was it called? I should freaking ask her. It was Charles Manson, my grandfather. A child, now an adult, but who is the child of one of Charles Manson's children, just realized recently that Charles Manson was her grandfather. And now she is all about it. I don't know what the movie's about. I just know this is by, and guess what? My wife said to me, you might like this. And I said, yes, ma'am. You better believe I will. I'll be watching it. And I guarantee you there will be a massive audience for it. You say the name Manson and you're going to get this. And it's not just because, again, he ordered people to kill for him in 1969. And that's for the younger crowd. Anybody who's younger might be watching, didn't know the story. Yeah, he didn't kill people himself. He actually had his followers do it for him. So he was convicted of conspiracy to commit all of those murders. And then his followers, most of them young 20, 21, 22-year-old girls, went out there and did murders for him. They were all sentenced to death. But of course, then California, I think in 1973 or 4, California overturned the death penalty in that state. And so all death penalty convictions were reverted to life in prison sentences. Then, by the way, California reinstated the death penalty. But did all these people get put back on death row? Nope. And so that's why they lived. And one of them has been released. I think just one of them has been released. Should have been executed. Anyway, I'm really chasing the squirrel here. But point being, what made that story so fascinating to people, and for 50 plus years it has been, is the conspiracy part of it. How did he get them to go? Why did he get them to go out and kill all these people? And for those who don't know the story of Helter Skelter, the thumbnail sketch here of it is he wanted to start a race war. What? He wanted to start a race war. Charles Manson believed that a race war between black people and white people was inevitable. And when it happened, he was going to lay low and live underground, not literally underground, but away in Death Valley, in the desert, what he called the bottomless pit. He and his followers would ride out the war between Whitey and Darky, as he referred to it. And the blacks were going to win that war. And when the black people won that war, took over the control of the country, they wouldn't know what to do then, because, again, quoting Charlie from the book Helter Skelter and from the trial transcripts and so forth, so please don't take this in any way, but he said something like Blackie wouldn't know what to do because they wouldn't know what to do. All they've ever done is what they were told to do. So if they had power, they wouldn't know what to do. So they would be prime pickings for us to take over. And then he would emerge from the desert, the bottomless pit, as he called it. And basically Charlie would run the whole show. Crazy, wild, stupid, insane conspiracy. But oh my gosh, was it gripping. I can't tell you how many books have been written about it, how many specials, how many documentaries, full-length feature films, the Manson story. My point is, and then OJ, do we even need to do that? Of course, about all of the conspiracies and everything that was done, with OJ. The point being, we are a nation of people that just cannot get enough of this kind of stuff. We cannot get enough of conspiracies. And Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and Nick Fuentes and Sean Ryan and so many of these podcasters, they know it. They know it. And so they have just been raking in money by clicks, people watching their podcasts. People who love the conspiracy, and they're out, she's out there doing, there's body doubles. There were at least a handful of people wearing maroon colored shirts on the UVU campus that day. They all could have been Tyler Robinson, or they were all posing as Tyler Robinson. They were body doubles. Tyler Robinson didn't turn himself in at the jail. That was actually a body double. They're trying to make it, this is the most elaborate conspiracy since the conspiracy of all conspiracies, JFK. And the reason I didn't include JFK when I talked about the most watched and fascinated conspiracies of the 20th century is because there was no trial, because Oswald never got brought to trial, because that patsy had to be silenced, which is where Jack Ruby came in. So there's never a trial for JFK's killer. And that's a problem. But you do see where I'm going with this. They grasped this from the very beginning when Charlie got killed, and they knew how to make money off of it. And Candace Owens, who already had one of the world's biggest podcasts, she used to have, 2-3 million followers for her podcast, which people who do this can only dream of having, because the monetization, she's become a millionaire just from that. But then when she went on this single-minded purpose of trying to destroy the life of Erica Kirk and Turning Point USA by presenting all of this stuff, her follower count went from 2 to 3 million to 5 to 6 million. And if you have any idea how the platforms pay for that kind of viewership, for that number of eyeballs on that number of screens, she has made millions. And that's why she's still going. That's why she's blaming, and it's actually a kind of a dual purpose for her. Not only is she getting rich, and some of the other names I'm mentioning are getting rich or richer from this. The anti-Semites and the anti-Zionists are also using this as an opportunity to take another pound of flesh from the Jews. The IDF did it. Israel was behind this because Charlie Kirk used to be an Israel supporter. Charlie Kirk was one of, talked openly about his many, many, many trips to Israel. And the prayers that he said were Jesus prayed at the site of what was Gethsemane. He said literally and multiple times in many of Charlie's testimonies, in speeches, sometimes on the debate stages, where he talked about his trips to Israel and how it literally brought him closer to Christ than he had ever been. And how extraordinary the land was. And he was a massive, massive supporter of Israel. And then, according to the narrative advanced by these people who are literally getting rich off of, what they're doing? They're collecting their own 30 pieces of silver. They're akin to Judas. So what they did is they said, well, Charlie started to make some statements about not necessarily being behind everything Bibi Netanyahu is doing, especially since October 7th. And so Charlie's views on Israel were starting to evolve a little bit. Charlie's views were, in my view, if this was happening, would be Charlie's views on Israel were starting to devolve a little bit, because he was already evolved. evolutionary, meaning wide open to the reality and the truth of what Israel is and was. You start thinking these evil thoughts about Israel and conspiracies and so forth, it would be the de-evolution. That wasn't happening. But that's the story they tried to tell, to say this is why Israel had to kill Charlie Kirk. He was so influential and he was starting to turn away from Israel. And if he turns away from Israel, well, that's really bad for Israel. So therefore, he's got to die. We're going to kill him. It's like, do we have to point out the most obvious of things? If Israel felt that the best course for their best interest was to take out people who slander Israel, who have influential positions, there are a whole hell of a lot of targets that they'd have killed. Candace Owens among them. What would be in Israel's best interest if they were of a mind to execute, assassinate, take out public figures who are doing harm to them? Charlie Kirk, who is an avowed supporter and defender and lover of Israel and its people, or Candace Owens, one of the anti-Zionists and anti-Semites who hates them, who is trying to advance conspiracy theories to make more people hate them and more people withdraw support from them. What would make more sense? So the stupidity of it all, the insanity of it all is it's on display. And now it's really, really frustrating. What's really frustrating? Yesterday, we found out that today, at the end of today's hearing, which is going to end at noon, we're not going to have not the verdict, because it's not the trial, the judge's decision about whether or not this should go forward to trial. At the end of an evidentiary hearing, the judge pretty much rules right then and there. I've heard enough to say, yes, there is enough probable cause here, enough evidence to take this to a trial, or the prosecution has not met the burden of giving me enough information to even schedule a trial. So no, we're gonna dismiss charges. That's how this is done at the end of an evidentiary hearing. And then when he says this case will proceed to trial, we'll get a plea from the defendant. That was all supposed to happen today. But just yesterday, we found out that the judge in this case has decided to delay his ruling on whether or not there's enough evidence to go to trial until when? Next week? No. Beginning of August? No. September. Holy hell. What's that about? An evidentiary hearing that should have taken an hour or two, but they agreed to let happen over 5 days, isn't going to give us an answer as to whether or not there's going to be a trial. He's going to wait. He wants the defense and the prosecution to submit basically summaries of their reasons why there should be a trial and there shouldn't be a trial in writing over the course of the rest of July and all of August. And then he'll read it in September. Then he'll give in writing his reason for having a trial or not. It's dragging this stuff out, and it's got to be impossible for Erica Kirk, for her children, and I don't know exactly how old her children and Charlie's are. We know that there are multiple pictures of them as toddlers, infants and toddlers in the last year of Charlie's life. In photographs, where they only show their children, the back of their children. They show them holding the kids with their faces away from the camera for obvious reasons, for security reasons, because of the number of nuts out there, like Tyler Robinson, who would want to do something to Charlie and hurt him and his family. Anyway, Erica and his kids and Charlie Kirk's parents and all of Charlie's family and close friends and coworkers and so on and so forth, just dragging this out in terms of, it's got to be just torturous for them. But this is what the judge is doing. So once he says, yeah, we're going to schedule a trial, then what? Spring? I mean, I'm not kidding. It's already been over 300 days since Charlie Kirk was killed. And now we're going to sit for another 60 days, about 45 days or whatever, until the evidentiary hearing ruling will be given. And then we're going to schedule a trial, which is probably going to be months after that. The only thing that I can think of and this is totally, completely made up in my head, is that maybe the judge is a little bit more forward thinking than I realized. And maybe he said the evidentiary hearing closing arguments, if you will, that are going to be due on September 1st, and I'll take my time to evaluate. Maybe this is just me thinking in my head first, but I'll say it out loud now. Maybe he'll give his ruling that this man will stand trial on September 10th, the actual 1-year anniversary of the murder. Maybe. Possible. Again, all legal and court protocols indicate that when the evidentiary hearing is over, the judge makes a decision right then and there. Yes, there's enough evidence here to have a trial, or no, there's not. The fact that he wants to kick it not just through the rest of July, but also through all of August, and the final briefings are due on September 1st, means maybe he'll take 9 days and then make the announcement that Tyler Robinson will stand trial for capital murder of Charlie Kirk, premeditated murder, a case that can indeed result in the death penalty. This is a death penalty case. Maybe that is announced on September 10th. I don't know. Just think it out loud. I'm trying to find some reason why this might be being dragged out as long as it is. Going to try to take a peek at the chat here before I get into some of the other topics on this Free for All Friday. Like I said, it's I've only got 20 minutes left to get some of these other things in before we get into Dr. Everett Piper. We're going to have that conversation for you at the top of the next hour or ish. A lot of good folks up here doing some commentary on the live screen, the live chat, I should say. Yes, indeed. Number one, Rhino, we let it roll. We let it roll, and we are rolling. Okay, after all of the greetings, what do we have here? Hey, Bob, if you have a chance, you should find the book Color, Communism, Common Sense by Manning Johnson. D-Arms? Or Darms? Are we going D-Arms or Darms? All right, either way. Yeah, okay. Would you mind if I take a moment to write that down? I like good suggestions, and I take them seriously. And if that is worth reading, I will absolutely look it up. Color, Communism, and Common Sense. Manning Johnson. Thank you for the tip. I like that. This is why I like doing a live stream. And don't get me wrong, I love anybody who's watching the show on replay. But I love the live stream because we can literally engage and interact like this in real time. So that's good. I appreciate that. Donna, good morning. Victor and Lindy. And here we go. What does B-Butt say? Candace Owens is a horrible, evil person, demonic possession. I don't like going over the top on those kinds of things. But how can that not be the case? The face of evil is in the face of Candace Owens. There is just no other way to describe what she has done and what she continues to do. All for profit. Yeah, no, let me back that off. All half for profit, half for her hate for Israel and for Jews, her anti-Semitism and her anti-Zionism. She's killing two birds with one stone. She's getting rich, and she's harming Israel, which she absolutely reviles. Candace sold her soul along with Tucker. Look up Jonathan Kahn on YouTube. I have seen Jonathan Kahn on YouTube, Donna, and yes, that's a good follow. The politically incorrect mechanic. Oh, I've got the mechanic too. I want to do something with here in a moment. The furry took the photo, then the letter was burned and wound up in a trash can. What hasn't he been charged? Why hasn't he been charged? Maybe this means to say, as an accomplice and with tampering or destruction of evidence. Probably because he's the star witness. He's the one who's got Tyler Robinson's admission and confession. I agree. Why is it taking so long for evidentiary? They are not even showing everything they have. Of course not. They're keeping a lot of that for the trial. There's no question about that. I think Robinson will plead to get life in prison instead of the death penalty. That is very possible. I know. I heard legal analysts all day yesterday talking about how overwhelming this evidence is. All of it. The physical evidence, the testimonial evidence, the DNA evidence, the lab evidence, the video evidence, the confession evidence. All of it. It's just so overwhelming that what the experts are saying is the prosecution doesn't have to make a deal at all here. Oftentimes, a prosecution will say, look, you see the evidence, we see the evidence, you know what this jury is going to say, you know the outcome of this. You want to stay off of death row? Give us a guilty plea right now and we'll do it. But in this case, given the high-profile nature of it and given the overwhelming evidence, the legal experts are saying the state doesn't have to do squat. They want to have this trial. They want to put it all out there, and so do the Kirks. A plea would negate the trial. A guilty plea would negate the trial. And the conspiracy nuts like Candace and Tucker and others would be able to say, look what they did. They got Tyler to confess to something he didn't do, to keep him off of death row. And now all of the stuff that Candace and the others say is evidence of a conspiracy won't have to be answered for in a court of law under penalty of perjury. That they set Tyler up so well that they forced him to either stay alive and go to jail or to be on death row after a guilty verdict. The Kirk family, I believe, Erica and everyone else want the trial. They want the trial just like they argued with the judge to make sure that every single element of what is being presented here is shown to the public. They want nothing in the dark because they have been hurt so much by the Candaces of the world and others who are, telling these evil lies, about what happened to Charlie. They want all of this put to bed. They want all of the evidence of rifles and bullets and fragments and DNA and video and guns being disassembled and guns being reassembled. All of the stuff that Candace and the others are using to try to say none of it, none of this really happened the way that they're saying it did. They want this trial to be public and they want it to be 100% transparent. So all of the conspiracy theorists fade away and die. Metaphorically. That's what they want. So I cannot imagine, given the weight of the evidence that the prosecution has to work with here, I cannot imagine that they would go to, or they probably wouldn't approach the defense, but that Tyler Robinson's lawyers would like to say, can we talk about a plea? Take the death penalty off the table, we'll give you a guilty plea. They don't have to accept that. And I don't think that the Kirk family would want them to. I really don't. I think they want absolute exposure and disclosure of everything, full transparency. But I do see your point. The Bible says money is the root of many evils, Charlie said. Okay, I think, but where does the phrase "the money is the root of all evil" come from? Or maybe that is just a takeoff of that for that Bible statement, if that's what it is. The love of money is the root of all evil, B. Butt says. It is biblical. The love of money is the root of all evil. Okay, there we go. So this is what people are saying. Anybody got the quote? Anybody got the verse? If anybody's got the verse, let me know. Seriously, what book and chapter and verse? I would love to know. The theory is that the defense is letting this play out to push Robinson into asking for a deal to get the death penalty off the table. See, there you go. That's just what politically incorrect mechanic says. Scroll through a little bit more here. Lisa says there is a great court decision when Jim Baker was convicted. The judge wrote that he of all people should have known that money was the root of evil. Look at that. It's just sad that this drawn out pretrial is just to disprove crazies like Megyn Kelly and Candace Owens. I quit listening to Megyn when she started that nonsense and her rants against Israel. Same. I used to love Megyn Kelly. I used to really, really respect and appreciate her opinions. I did. Twist of this trial is the trans furry gay lover aspect. Well, that's one of the reasons for, the belief that Tyler Robinson's motive was what it was. That's why he wrote in his confession letter, if you will, to Lance Twiggs. They're going to make sure Robinson never makes it to trial. Well, that's interesting. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I think he's going to be under great protection because that's the last thing in the world. Because again, how does the JFK assassination theory and the conspiracies last for these, so many years now? If Oswald had been alive, if Oswald was alive and was able to tell the story and to tell his story, it changes everything. But they had to silence their patsy. If Tyler Robinson doesn't make it to trial, if something happens, you know how this is going to go. It's like Epstein. It's why they murdered Epstein. Firmly believe that. Epstein didn't hang himself. We all know this. But Epstein could talk. And so he had to be silenced. If Tyler Robinson is a patsy, he needs to be shut up now, and he needs to not make it to trial. But again, if they were setting up this grand conspiracy for this kid to shoot Charlie Kirk and or to make it appear as though they would have shot and killed him already. They would have shot him and killed him on the day of. Lordy, what else do we have? Tucker was my dad's favorite on Fox, so I paid for his streaming service. Now it's non-renewed. Good for you, Lisa. I'm with you. Okay, there's a lot more there, but I do have a lot of other things to do. One of the other things I want to do right now is I want to say thank you and kudos. Thank you and kudos. Those are different. Thank you for being a sponsor of Strictly Speaking Unfiltered, Charlie and Charlie's Auto Repair in Lakewood. You can see the, sorry, I got to get that comment off the screen there. You can see the address there, 13728 Madison Avenue in Lakewood. If you are a Northeast Ohio viewer, there it is. Get to Lakewood. Call this phone number to make an appointment for your car, 216-470-0170. Doesn't even have to be your car. It's funny. We talk about it all the time. It's called Charlie's Auto Repair. But if it's got an engine, Charlie can fix it. If you can get your snowblower, lawnmower, plow, John Deere, I don't care what it is, get it to Charlie, and he will get it handled for you. He's just a phenomenal mechanic and a phenomenal mind. He does everything, like I said before, from under the hood to under the vehicle to inside the CPU of the computer that runs the whole doggone thing. Electronics issues, Charlie will do them all. And then, of course, everybody has to do maintenance and upkeep. Get those brake pads checked, maybe changed, oil changed, get tires rotated, get new tires put on. Charlie is going to take great care of you. And the one thing I can promise you is Charlie will never overcharge you. Charlie is an honest MAGA America First patriot, and he doesn't bilk people the way so many in his business do. Sadly, but truly, you find an honest mechanic, you stick with him, and that's Charlie. Charlie Kalani at Charlie's Auto Repair, 216-470-0170. Honored. And so I said thank yous to him, and that's for being a partner. And now the kudos to him. Kudos to Charlie Kalani. Sorry, I got to get this back off the screen now. Kudos for his turn as a public speaker on Wednesday night. Charlie finally got me the video of his speech that he gave on the Second Amendment to the Parma Republican Club, headed up by Doris. And I'll tell you what, this was fun to watch. It was about a half an hour speech, and I watched it yesterday. Charlie finally got it to me. I can't play the whole thing for you. The audio quality is not great on this video that I'm going to share with you here. Let me put this up. There's our man. The audio quality is not great because he's talking into a microphone and those speakers are pointed one way, and the camera that is set up on a tripod is not necessarily in the best place to absorb the speaker sound. So it's a little tinny, it's a little echoey because of the dynamics of the room and that setup. So I can't really play much more than I'm about to, but I'm going to give you roughly the close of what Charlie is talking about. He was invited to speak on the Second Amendment. Parma Republican Club, very strong supporters thereof, pretty much all in the conservative community are. And Charlie is just one of the go-to guys, not just in Northeast Ohio, but in Ohio in terms of his knowledge of gun rights, guns, the Second Amendment, laws, regulations in the state, out of the state, everywhere. He's just, this is his passion. And everybody knows it. And that's why he was invited to speak. And I didn't attend, but I was really appreciative that Charlie did send me the video. Even though the audio wasn't great, I want you to hear at least a part of what Charlie had to say in his speech. This is our man.
The Second Amendment has nothing to do with hunting deer. The primary purpose of the possessing firearms under the Second Amendment is to resist the tyrant. Deer hunting and shooting competitions are activities to keep us proficient in dispatching the former. I do not need 30 rounds to kill a deer. I need 30 rounds when 4 scumbags break into my house in the middle of the night. Why do police officers carry pistols with a minimum of 16, 18 round capacity or more? Because every one of those bullets is an opportunity of staying alive and an extra chance of life. Why shouldn't you or your loved ones be entitled to those same chances in life? If my wife is home by herself with my kids, I want her to have as many chances in that gun as possible. Like number 6, like many other left-wing policies, attacks on firearms do more harm to those that these laws are supposedly meant to protect. Taxes levied against firearms and ammunition restrict the low income, typically living in high crime areas, from being able to protect themselves. There is a direct correlation between strict gun control and high crime. Take a look at the top 10 most dangerous cities and states, and you will find the government extremely hostile towards individual firearms ownership. Number 7, follow the 4 rules of firearm safety. Treat every gun as if it's loaded. Never point a firearm at anything you aren't willing to destroy. Keep your finger off the trigger until you are ready to fire, or as I like to say, keep your booger hook off the dang switch.
I know it's hard to hear, but I wanted to give it as much of a chance as possible there. Again, just the acoustics of the room and the placement of the camera that is doing the recording and the speakers and so forth. It makes it a little hard to hear. Then there's the ancillary crowd noise too, with people chatting as they eat their meals and listen to Charlie. But thank you to Doris for having Charlie out as the speaker there. Congratulations to Charlie. Phenomenal job. Like I said, I watched the whole thing and I was able to blast the volume up a little bit louder on my phone as I watched it. But Charlie, like I said, if you've ever got a question about firearms, and if you are in our chat, Charlie's in the live chat virtually every morning. He is a great resource. And by the way, that is on YouTube. That is on YouTube, and Charlie's YouTube channel, I should be able to pull that up there, is The Politically Incorrect Mechanic. There you go. So if you'd like to watch that in its entirety, go to YouTube, look for The Politically Incorrect Mechanic, and it's called Palmer Republican's Second Amendment Speech. So Charlie, good on you, brother. Appreciate you very much. All right. Before we get to Dr. Piper, and it looks like I want to just hit a couple of these. Like I said, I told you it's a very, very crowded and a very, very full Free-for-all Friday today with stories, but I'm not going to get to a lot of them because the Charlie Kirk story is really just one that fascinates me and enrages me and motivates me in so many different ways to cover this stuff as thoroughly as possible, to make sure people really understand and then we can differentiate fantasy from reality, the fantasy world in which Candace Owens lives and some of these other people, and the reality in which the rest of us live. But this is an ancillary story. It's a side story to this. You probably saw this. The story is actually from about 9 days ago. A University of Tennessee professor, and I hate that that's the story, by the way, because I love the University of Tennessee. My daughter's a law school graduate there. University of Tennessee professor is going to receive $1.9 million because she made social media posts criticizing and tap dancing on the grave of Charlie Kirk. She's getting $2 million because she, in one of the most debased and disgusting diatribes I think anybody offered, and you know there were tons of them, and a lot of people lost their jobs over it. Her discussion of and her treatment of Charlie Kirk being murdered, a 31-year-old young husband and father, murdered for words, for talking. Remember that. Charlie Kirk was a peaceful man who said, I have a microphone. Here, you have one too. Let's talk it out. That's why he was murdered. And all of these people celebrated it. The Tennessee System Board of Trustees approved a $1.9 million settlement to former professor Tamar Sherinian after she called Kirk, who was assassinated on September 10th during his American comeback tour at Utah Valley University, a disgusting psychopath. He was put on administrative leave for a social media post. And I'm going to share this with you so you can see it yourself. This isn't the actual post. Well, actually, it's kind of both, but this is a description of and a quoting of the post. And I'm going to pop this up on the screen. All right. So this is Robbie Starbuck introducing everybody to Tamar Sherinian, professor at UT Knoxville. Someone sent this horrific post to my DMs. UTK must take action. They did. They did, which is why we're in this story right now. Here's what she said about Charlie Kirk. Quote, "The world is better off without him in it. Even those who are claiming to be sad for his wife and kids, like his kids are better off living in a world without a disgusting psychopath like him and his wife. Well, she's a sick F for marrying him. So I don't care about her feelings." This is a professor. There's another view of it. And let me see if I can enlarge that. No, I can't. It enlarges the screen, but not the image. Yeah. Let me give you one more attempt to enlarge that by going full screen. That helps maybe a little bit. But there it is. This is in response. Her comment was in response to somebody else's post. The world is better off without him in it. Even those who are claiming to be sad for his wife and kids, like his kids are better off living in a world without a disgusting psychopath like him and his wife. Well, she's a sick F for marrying him, so I don't care about her feelings. So what Robbie Starbuck had written there in the original post, his original post, the one that I first focused on there, was somebody at UTK must take action about this. Also, why do we have queer theory or queer anthropology specialists at the University of Tennessee? Insane. Yeah, that is insane. But he said somebody needs to do something about this. So the University of Tennessee did do something about this. She was placed on administrative leave. She later apologized and said it was insensitive of her and uncharacteristic of her as a person for doing this. Ultimately, though, the university did the right thing. They put her on administrative leave, conducted the full investigation, and then fired her on February 11th of this year. So roughly 5 months, 6 months after the killing of Charlie Kirk and her disgusting post. So she was fired. In a February letter to her informing her that she was being fired, UT Chancellor Dondi Plowman wrote, "Your words celebrated a gruesome murder which horrifically took place on a college campus similar to our own, and then went on to callously demean the grief and loss felt by the widow and the young children of the victim, while also mocking any grief felt by others who sympathized with the surviving family." Kudos to the university for doing the right thing. But because we live in this world, and not always a just world, doing the right thing made this bitch rich. I said what I said. "My client is pleased that the parties reached a resolution," said Rob Bigelow, Sherinian's lawyer. "Litigation is always difficult, and we're grateful to everyone on both sides who worked diligently to bring this matter to a close. We believe the resolution reflects the seriousness of the issues while allowing everyone to move forward. We wish the university nothing but success in the future." Well, if the university is to have success in the future, they're going to do it with $1.9 million less, because that's how much they had to give this bitch for attacking Charlie Kirk in such an unbelievably unconscionable, callous, evil way. She said that, they fired her, she gets a settlement of $1.9 million. I see things like this and I don't know. I question a lot. I question a lot of things. We do have freedom of speech in this country. We do. But with positions, particularly positions of authority, which is a university professor has, there is responsibility for how that speech is used. You have the right to say something that won't get you thrown in jail, but you don't have a right to say something and not have there be repercussions for it on the professional level. Your boss doesn't have to be represented by you if you say ridiculous, repugnant, horrific things about other people in the way that she did. You shouldn't get rich for that. I had so much more to get to in this today's episode, but I'm not going to get there. Like I said, President Trump going all in on the Supreme Court, saying he wants a new hearing on the birthright citizenship issue after the discovery of this birther tourism company that is launched. Let me just get a call. I won't be able to do full commentary on these because I got to get to the Dr. Piper interview. But let me just give you a little bit of what I have from some of these things. This was actually a Fox News story that can kind of I can kind of share this part of it with you, I think. Sorry, I'm kind of bouncing all over the place here. Yeah, maybe this won't be able to be played. Yeah, I think it will. Okay, here we go. Let me share this one with you. Sorry, I'm flying solo on this, so it takes just a minute to get everything in place, but here we go.
Giving birth to a child, then going back to the Chinese Communist Party, educating their child there, and they have U.S. citizenship, which could amount to more than 1 million new voters in this country over time.
Only a stupid nation would allow this to happen. They also have a website, havemybabyintexas.com. By the way,
you see the prices there? I mean, that's a billboard. Birth packages in South Texas, natural $39.50, C-section $55.25. Call here to get to Texas to have your baby and have it be an American citizen. So this is what President Trump wrote. Signs and billboards are being put up all over our southern border and Mexico advertising birthright citizenship with delivery starting at $4,000. Likewise, similar signs are going up all over our country. Billions of dollars will be illegally made by this scam, with citizenship going to anyone willing to pay. It will be by far the number one way of becoming a citizen, and then the entire family will be allowed to follow. Not sustainable. Nobody saw this coming. American citizenship is not for sale. In fact, that is a crime, and therefore the Supreme Court ruling is wrong. I will be asking for a rehearing by the United States Supreme Court immediately. This miscarriage of justice will destroy America if they don't change their absolutely insane decision. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. Spot on, 100% correct. I just wanted to share, like I said, a couple of these things with you. Let me get you this one as well.
And, we have a unique responsibility to act from the heart of empire, the belly of the beast. The most important thing that we can do is take that empire down from within.
Our role ultimately is to facilitate our own empire's failure in ways that we can, ultimately to overthrow our own empire.
U.S. imperialism is not a thing that can be reformed away. It has to be overthrown through revolutionary struggle.
And to build a mass movement that can use the leverage of workers to hit the kill switch on American imperialism here within the American empire.
This was a tweet posted by Senator Ted Cruz. This is today's Democrat Party, run by, yes, as you can see, the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America. They have literally co-opted and taken over the whole of the Democrat Party. This is Representative Wesley Hunt. Let me give you this. I told you it was a free-for-all. I had a lot of topics. It's just that I fixated on Charlie. I just want to get a couple of words in on each of these. Wait, that was the second story, second version of the same story about the birthright citizenship. Let me give you this one. This is a police officer in Fort Worth, Texas, having a conversation with some preachers who are on the street doing street preaching, and apparently hurting people's delicate feelings. And those delicate feelings apparently are so important that this officer says he can give a citation for using those words. This is the exact opposite of what I was just talking about with the UT professor. Because this would be a true blatant violation of the First Amendment rights of these preachers. If somebody just says, my feelings are getting hurt, and now there is a legal ramification for that. That is literally what happens here. This is grotesque. And I'm going to write about this in the Sunday briefing that you will get Sunday morning at 6 a.m. I promise you, this will be a part of it, but watch.
But no, I want to ask, and I'm being dead serious. So if a biological male comes up to me who says he's a woman, and I call him, I say, sir, and he gets offended, is that a citable offense? If I call a biological male a male, and he says I'm offended, I'm gonna whatever. Is that a citable offense if he's offended by that speech?
Man, we're talking gray area right now. We're not talking.
We'll pause it right there. In case you couldn't hear, the preacher who was videotaping this officer, who had apparently been called because of the preachers, said, "If I call a biological male a male, is that a citable offense?" That's what he repeated 3 or 4 different times, because we're talking about, it's clearly going to be about the trans thing. If a dude dressed in a dress and somebody calls him a dude, is that a citable offense? And the officer said, you heard him, that's a gray area. What? Not in the United States, it's not. That might be happening in the UK right now, and in fact it is. There's countless numbers of videos of people having cuffs put on them. Not just citations given, but arrests being made for saying things that other people object to. That's literally free speech gone, bye, dead. That's happening in the UK. Is that going to happen here? Because this is only the first of 2 different police officers who were asked questions like this similarly, and one of them threatened to arrest the person asking it. And in this case, this guy says, it's a gray area as to whether or not we would cite you for saying something that offended somebody else. That's literally why the First Amendment exists. So that you cannot be arrested, you cannot be cited, you cannot be punished for saying something that somebody else disagrees with. We had to have the right to disagree with the British Crown. We had the right to disagree with the King. That's why the First Amendment was written.
About earlier when it says that's a vague conversation, vague charge.
I'm genuinely curious.
Sure, I don't believe I would cite that for offensive language. Offensive language to me is calling somebody
N-word,
curse words.
We don't curse for preachers.
Sure, no, I agree. But it's more like you call somebody a male. I don't necessarily find that offensive unless they come up.
You don't, but what if they do?
That's what I'm saying. If they come up and say, hey, I'm offended by that, and you continue to do that, well, then that's just becoming offensive to them.
And here's the catch.
So it's the, hey, warning, I'm feeling offended by that. Then we're moving into the potential.
But so what if I'm offended?
Somebody says I'm offended by that, and you keep saying it. Now we move into potential citation areas. That's what that officer just said. Now, I don't know if he's speaking for department policy or just on his own feelings, but he just said, first of all, by the way, why is the N-word something that is citable? I mean, nobody says it for obvious reasons, but in the world of free speech, it still has to be allowed to be said. Now, if you're taunting somebody and it starts a ruckus, if you use that word and it starts a fight or something, now you could be cited for disorderly conduct. But just for saying a word, that we got problems here. But aside from that, any other words, if just somebody says they're offended and you say it again, he just said, well, we're getting into a place where I might cite you for that. If I go up to a dude in a dress and say, sir, mister, and guy, and hey, dude, and all kinds of male references over and over and over again, you cite me, I'll see your ass in court. No, this is not okay.
By what they say. Like they come up telling me this and then the other, swearing at me, will they get cited?
Are you offended by it?
I'm offended by all of this.
What's good for the goose is good for the gander.
I'm offended by seeing half-naked men run around with children. I am deeply offended by that.
Right. Unfortunately, there's not much on our side to do anything.
Unfortunately, there's not much on our side that we can do about that. If you're offended by naked men being with children in things like pride parades, your offense doesn't really count. But if you call them the wrong name, if you use the wrong pronoun or whatever for them, and it offends them, well, then we got a problem there. We got to do something about that. It's just that much insanity. It's just that much insanity. All right, before I give you Dr. Piper, I want to remind you again about our friends at AFP, Americans for Prosperity, doing some amazing work here in the state of Ohio, and you can learn more about it at BuckeyeBlueprint.com, how you can help make the Buckeye State the best state. By the way, did you see we have already upped, one level? Just yesterday, I saw another story. I didn't get to it this morning, but the state of Ohio was ranked #1 in the country for business. I don't know the specifics and the metrics of that, but number one in the country, and it was being flexed yesterday by Vivek Ramaswamy saying, look at this, the state of Ohio under Republican leadership is number one in the country for business. AFP Ohio's goal is to make Ohio number one in all of these areas: economic opportunity, education, freedom, energy abundance, and government accountability. Please visit BuckeyeBlueprint.com and see how you can participate and support this state in becoming the best that it can be. All right, really, really important. I've got one more message for you that I want to share before I give you Dr. Everett Piper. And this is a thanks to my good friend, super strong patriot, and super strong friend of seniors who are in need of Medicare services.
If you're on Medicare and ever find yourself confused by your coverage, you're not alone. Medicare can be complicated, and the wrong information or no information at all can cost you time, money, and peace of mind. Hey, it's Bob France. For a Medicare professional I know and trust, Mark King. I've known Mark for years, and I've confidently referred Medicare recipients to him time and time again because he puts people first and explains Medicare in plain English. Mark takes the time to help you understand how Medicare works, what coverage you have, and what options might be available based on your needs. There's no pressure, no confusion, and no rushed decisions. Just honest guidance from someone who's been doing this for nearly 40 years and who knows this system inside and out. If you're unsure about your doctors, your prescriptions, or your overall coverage, Mark is the go-to guy you need. Call 440-832-8936 to get an appointment. That's 440-832-8936. And for user-friendly information, visit keepingmedicaresimple.com. I trust Mark King for answers, and you can too.
All right, there you go. By the way, I was just looking at the chat while I gave you that message, and apparently it was biblical, and it was Timothy 6, chapter 6, verse 10. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil, and some people craving money have wandered from the true faith and pierced themselves with many sorrows. There you go. I just stumbled across, like I said, saying money is the root of all evil because I think that's what's driving Candace and others, and it just I'm glad we were able to finish that off. All right. Since we're quoting Bible verses, this is the perfect segue into my conversation with Dr. Everett Piper. Dr. Piper and I talked on Tuesday night. It's one of my favorite conversations I've ever had with him, and I think you're going to appreciate it too. The beginning is going to be about the relationship between the United States and Jews, not just the nation of Israel, but Jews in general. It's a fascinating conversation, I promise you. Then we get into Charlie Kirk a little bit at the end as well. I really think you want to settle in and make sure you watch this entire thing. So let me bring you Dr. Everett Piper. Oops, I've got to share that with you here. And then I'm going to bring it to you right here. I saw a newspaper headline or something, or a website headline saying Buc-ee's announces like, I don't know, 10 more locations or something like that. I keep waiting for one to be in Northeast Ohio. Of course, if you have one in your backyard, it's not an adventure or a destination or whatever when you stop on one of your long trips. You know what I mean? It's kind of neat that they're all in the South-ish. I think there's one in Indiana that's probably as far north as they go. I don't know for sure. But I guess that's what makes it kind of fun. If you're going on a trip, if you get on a road that's got a Buc-ee's, you are loving your life. If there's one in your backyard, it ceases to be special, I guess, right?
Well, do you know what they pay? We stopped in Springfield, and they have a placard, a tent type sign sitting out front, the front door, advertising for positions.
Oh yeah! Every time I go into the one in we stop in Kentucky. There's one in Kentucky that's on the way to Tennessee where we stop, and there's always hiring signs.
Well, they had the general manager's position posted, $275,000.
Wow!
I was stunned. I thought I need to come out of retirement and go work at Buc-ee's. $275,000.
They have to pay well. I mean, and obviously you're not going to get that position unless you have been a general manager of some stuff before. You probably have a lot of experience for that. But I don't get the sense that those workers there are unhappy. They're making for what they're doing, whether they're working, fresh brisket on the board, if they're doing that, or if they're at the registers, or if they're stocking. I mean, and maybe they take pride in their work. There's something about it. Maybe it's the South. I don't know, but they take pride in their work, and everybody seems about as cheery as the guests, who are there. They take pride in having the cleanest bathrooms in America. They literally talk about that. I mean, so they must pay them well. They're not all another grind, another dollar. You know what I mean? I feel like the place is good business. I do.
Yeah, well, they pay well. Good for them. Capitalism at its best. So,
well, and something else. It's weird about Buc-ee's because it's such a destination because of the store, and that's everything from the home goods and the clothing and all the other different things that are non-travel related to all of the things that are, and all of the great food and so on and so forth. It's such a destination. I think they could charge whatever they wanted for gas, and people would pay it. We're stopping at Buc-ee's. Do I got to pay $1 more a gallon than if I stop at the Love's or the Sunoco or the BP, 5 more exits up or something? Yep, don't care. We're going to Buc-ee's. But they don't. Their gas prices are as competitive as anybody else on those highways.
Yeah,
and they could really, they could really rip people off if they wanted to, because people are going to come there for the stuff, and if they have got to pay for the gas, they're going to do it. I would.
Yeah. It's a good business model. They're doing a great thing. I see some other competitors. There's a place just outside of St. Louis as I drove through. I think it's called Wally's or something, and it looks like it's going to be a competitor to Buc-ee's.
Wow, I'm not surprised. They're very territorial, by the way, Buc-ee's. There was a convenience store. There's one here in Ohio. I don't know where else they are, but they have a moose. Their logo is a moose instead of a beaver, and it's not Buc-ee's, and it doesn't rhyme with Buc-ee's, but it's like they've got a cartoon animal in a circle that's similar in some way to the beaver in a circle. That is their thing, and Buc-ee's is suing them, and it's a big story. I mean, I saw this a few months back. I don't know where it stands now, but they're suing them for copyright infringement. And I'm thinking to myself, that's a little extreme. A moose and a beaver. You didn't corner the whole, animal kingdom in your copyright, I think. But they're very territorial. So whatever Wally is, they better be careful that they don't run afoul of Buc-ee, because the lawyers are coming.
Yeah.
We can dive into the real news now, and the real stuff now with Dr. Piper. So, all right, let's bring this up. I had it up when you came into the room, so let's go ahead and bring it up now. Look at that. Ready and raring to go. That would be the Washington Times from this past Sunday.
Right.
Dr. Everett Piper's latest column, Mike Huckabee is right. No United States of America without Jews. I'll tell you what, when I saw that posted on Facebook, your post, and I saw how many comments it had brought in and how many reactions too, just as far as the likes and then the laughter from the critics. Holy goodness, did you go through it this time with this column? So since everybody has an opinion and not all of them are, boy, that Dr. Piper was spot on there. The anti-Zionists and the anti-Semites and so on and so forth were out for you this time around. I'll let you give us the lowdown. What are we talking about?
Well, before we get into the article, it's interesting that you reviewed some of the comments, and I sent you that particular link because I knew that particular social platform did have a lot of naysayers, and I wanted you to see it. Here's the thing. Almost all of them completely missed the point of the column. Now, you can disagree with my point, but you have to refute the claims that I'm making. You don't go down rabbit trails, and you don't essentially move the target to something else that you can, a straw man. You don't construct a straw man so that you can flail away at it so that you can beat it. That's called a Socratic fallacy. And indeed, it's labeled the straw man fallacy. You construct a scarecrow because a scarecrow is easy for you to beat. Go out and flail away at the thing because it can't fight back. So that's one Socratic fallacy that is prevalent all the time in our culture right now. You ignore the point, you ignore the argument, you construct a straw man, and then you beat the straw man up thinking that you've won the debate, and you haven't, because you didn't even address the issue. The other one is the so what fallacy, and that's the non sequitur. And that is pervasive in our culture too. You bring up, sometimes it's anything that deals with Donald Trump, okay? or anything in MAGA or anything that's political today. And people will say, well, what about Trump? Well, Trump may not even be relevant to the point. So deal with the issues at hand, people. Don't run down rabbit trails and don't commit the so what fallacies. And that's pervasive in the response to this column. So essentially, I'm making the argument that Mike Huckabee was right when a couple of weeks ago, he said, and this is his quote, one of the reasons that the United States and Israel are tied together is because it is upon the Jewish foundation that Christianity was formed, and upon the Jewish and Judeo-Christian foundation, Western civilization was formed. Without that foundation, there would not be an America. It's as simple as that. Close quote, Mike Huckabee. And I'm arguing he's right. Now, why am I arguing that? Well, you can actually go to a research project that was done, and it's one of the most comprehensive peer-reviewed research projects that I've ever read about or heard about. It's written or it's summarized in a book by Bruce Feiler. That's F-E-I-L-E-R. And the title of his book is America's Prophet. And in that book, Feiler presents this case. He talks about in 1973, two political scientists named Donald Lutz and Charles Heinemann. They undertook a comprehensive survey of American political rhetoric during our founding era. And what I want you to hear is this. Their methodology included reading everything published in America between 1760 and 1805. They read it all. If it was published and if it's now housed in the Library of Congress, they read it. Every document that was published between 1760 and 1805, they read. It took them 10 years.
With some guardrails or guidelines, right? I mean, not every, drama or mystery novel, right? We're talking documents. We're talking, or books that are, right? I mean, I'm just trying to, is there, to say they read everything that was published for a 45-year period, if my math is right there. Is that what you're saying? Everything that was published, regardless of what type of genre the writing was in?
They may have, the guardrail may have been that it was anything written by the thought leaders during our founding era, such as the president of Harvard or Yale, or anybody that was remotely related to the founding of our country, our founding fathers, et cetera.
Okay.
Like that may be a guardrail. But Bob, I'm not sure, because if you stop and think about it, it's 1760 to 1805. How much was published? They read 15,000 documents. Was there more than 15,000 that would have been published during that early part of our nation? I don't know. But they read 15,000 documents, and they documented who was quoted most. That's essentially what their research was. So they go back.
That's the most interesting thing about that. I'm sorry. As I read it, that's the most interesting thing. When you hear some of these names, you're going to give them.
So they're reading all this stuff that was published during our founding era, and they're curious who was quoted most often in these letters, in these various different communiques that took place in the founding era between our founding fathers and each other, or between the president of Yale and the president of Harvard and the media. Who was quoted most? And we might think, well, it was probably Montesquieu, it was probably Hume, it was probably Hobbes, it was probably Cicero or Plato. Now, those people were quoted, the classics were quoted, but guess who was quoted more often than any of these? In fact, quoted more often than all of the classics combined? Moses. And it was out of the book of Deuteronomy. So the book of Deuteronomy was quoted not only more than Montesquieu, Hume, Locke, and Hobbes, and Plato and Cicero, it was quoted more than those classic authors combined. And you might ask, well, why Deuteronomy? Well, it's pretty clear. If you read the comments from some of our founding thought leaders, here's one, 1775, Samuel Langdon, president of Harvard. He argued that America should adopt the same form of government that God handed down to Moses on Sinai. He said the Republic of the Israelites is an example to the American states. The Jewish government was a perfect republic. Close quote, president of Harvard, 1775. Then you have Ezra Stiles. He was the president of Yale. And he agreed and he added this: God is now giving this land to us, who in the virtue of the ancient covenant are the seed of Abraham. The Lord freed us from Egypt by a mighty hand, by an outstretched arm, and by his awesome power, and by signs and portents. He brought us to this place and gave us this land flowing with milk and honey. Close quote. That's Ezra Stiles, president of Yale. So he's obviously echoing the imagery of Exodus in his defense of the founding of our American Republic on this American soil. And then if you add to that, you've got, let's go down to Thomas Paine. Many will argue that Thomas Paine was the most secular, even an anti-religious person, an atheist, some would argue, but even he explicitly cited the Jewish leaders of Gideon, Samuel, and David, as he argued that the United States should sever ties with the British monarchy and adopt a republican form of government. So even Thomas Paine is referring back to Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus and First and Second Samuel and the book of these books of the Old Testament, the Jewish Tanakh, the Jewish Torah, as the basis for his argument for republican form of government. Now let's go to Benjamin Franklin. I love what he says. So he proposed, he proposed, and people will say Benjamin Franklin wasn't a Christian, he was a deist. Well, here's what he wanted our official seal of the United States to be. He argued that Moses should be on the seal, standing on the shore and extending his hand over the sea, thereby causing I'm quoting him right now, causing the same to overwhelm Pharaoh, who is sitting in an open chariot with a crown on his head and a sword in his hands, raised from a pillar of fire in the clouds, reaching to Moses to express that he acts by the command of deity. Close quote, Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. And then he wanted on that seal this phrase, rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God, close quote. So Franklin is obviously tying Moses and Deuteronomy, the Exodus, into the founding of America. Thomas Jefferson, okay, many say he wasn't a Christian, just a deist.
Yeah, but if I may interrupt for a second here, we should probably clarify this just to make sure that we're being, fair and honest about this. Obviously, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Paine, Thomas Jefferson were all funded by AIPAC, and they had all of this pro-Israel stuff. And so let's they were paid for this commentary and the stuff that they said, because clearly that's the only people who could actually be praising Israel's contribution to the existence of Western civilization and the United States of America. So let's make sure we have that.
The comments, so you're echoing comments that basically come up in this thread where people are objecting and saying that I'm getting my $7,000 because I'm writing pro-Israeli pieces. Please send the 7,000. I'd love to have it. I haven't received any of those checks yet. Here's the point. Bob,
you can do Jefferson. You didn't get to Jefferson before I cut you off.
Okay, let's do Jefferson and then I'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
Jefferson agreed with Franklin, and he added that the seal should include an image, this is his language, a quote, image of the children of Israel in the wilderness, led by a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. So essentially, Jefferson is saying, great idea, Ben. I like your idea for this official seal of the United States of America, which has Moses standing on a shore, lifting his hands up, overwhelming Pharaoh with this as the floods come in upon his chariots as he tries to follow them across the divided sea. And then this ray from a pillar of fire and clouds reaching to Moses to express that he acts on the command of God and deity. Thomas Jefferson follows on that particular recommendation from Franklin, where Franklin says rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. And he says, I like it. I like this. And it should also have an image of the children of Israel in the wilderness, led by that cloud by day and that pillar of fire by night. This is a communication between.
We're sure he said children of Israel, right? Not children of Palestine. Not
children of Israel. There was no Palestine. That's the.
Oh well, what? That's their land that Israel stole, for crying out loud. I'm obviously just having fun with these lunatics.
These people are the first ones to call for this land acknowledgement nonsense that we're every time we take at Barack Obama's library, the opening of his libraries, they opened up with a land acknowledgement to whatever tribes supposedly had that area of Chicago. Well, what tribes had that land before those tribes? And what tribes had that land before those tribes? It's an endless debate as to who had the land first. But I'll tell you this, if anybody has the right to the indigenous lands that they've been on for some 4,000 years, it's the Jews. Nobody else can go back that far in history and claim this has always been our land. And it's been documented over and over and over and over and over again, not only in writing in historical documents, but in archaeology that is discovered even as we're speaking. You go over to Israel, and I've been there. Every time they put a shovel in the ground, they're coming up with more archaeological evidence to support the biblical narrative. Nothing is refuting it. Nothing disputes the biblical narrative. Everything always supports it. So here's my point. We do have a massive peer-reviewed research article that was done by these two political scientists where they just wanted to know, who did Thomas Jefferson quote? Who did Benjamin Franklin quote? Who did Thomas Paine quote? Who did Alexander Hamilton quote? Who did the presidents of Harvard and Dartmouth and Princeton and Yale quote more than anybody else? Was it Montesquieu and Hume and Locke? No, it was Moses. Over and over again, they quoted Moses. So you can disagree with my position on Israel. You can argue all you want that Donald Trump's particular foreign policy as it relates to Israel and Iran is wrong. But that doesn't have anything to do, even if you're right, which I would disagree with you, even if you're right in bringing up those current claims with regard to Israel, it does not refute the fact that Moses was America's prophet, as Bruce Feiler calls him. America wouldn't exist as we know it today, and the proof's in the pudding, because Moses, that man, his writings, his system of government, his laws, the 10 Commandments and otherwise, his model for how we should get along with one another, for civility, for culture, and for country and government is the foundation that was used more than any other by our founding fathers. You can take it to the bank. It's as simple as that. I agree with Mike Huckabee. If it wouldn't have been for the Jews, i.e. Moses, we wouldn't have America as we know it today.
I think that's well said, Dr. Piper. We shouldn't, but I want to give a little bit of light, a little bit of oxygen to some of the people that you have been engaging with here. So I want to throw this up on the screen real quick. And it's not easy to see because it's just the way that Facebook is set up. The comments here are on the side. So I'm just going to have to read them. People can't really I don't know if I can enlarge that. Oh, look at there. I guess I can't. Oh, look at that. I didn't know that would have even happen. That's even better. I think everybody can see that now, right? Yeah. Okay. That's way better. Okay. So in your post on, actually, this is not even on this is yours. This is the Washington Times opinion page or their account posting your column from this past Sunday. And let's just have a quick look here at some of the responses. If I can, boy, it's still very narrow there. It's not ideal as far as being able to see this. Maybe that's the best way. Okay. There would be no USA without the God of the Bible. It's the other way around, suggesting that Israel would not exist were it not for, or Jews would not exist were it not for the United States of America. Sounds like Mike wants to build up financial support for his daughter's future political aspirations. Of course, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is a very highly regarded governor of Arkansas and potential future candidate maybe for president. She is very highly regarded.
Okay, I know you want to keep going. I'm going to jump in.
Go right ahead. If you want to jump in there, yep.
None of that matters. Again, it's a non sequitur. So what? Even if it were true, which is absurd, that Mike Huckabee is trying to use his loyalty with Israel to support his daughter's political ambition, that doesn't make any sense. I don't know where they're going with that. But even if that were true, does it refute anything I've said and anything that Bruce Feiler says in his book? It does not refute any of it. So deal with the issue.
That's what they do. I mean, you are obviously correct. It has nothing to do with that. But they're trying to find a way to defame the straw man, like you said, to create a straw man to beat up here because they can't refute the facts that you articulated and that the researcher, what was his name,
I don't know if you pronounce it Feeler or Filer. It's Feiler.
Yeah, so you can't refute what you wrote, what he did, and so on and so forth. So it's attack the individual, attack Mike Huckabee, and eventually they're going to attack Everett Piper as well because they just can't refute the the actual content here. So I'm glad you did that. Let me go down a little bit further here because I want to get you to respond to a couple of others. See, there's another attack on Huckabee. I don't think the only thing Huckabee has been right about it ages, and somebody else immediately said, not even. I can't see it now, but not even this time. BB, is that you talking? Right? APAC Times again. Trump is older than Israel, and you want to know the founders' opinions. And again, they're going by the declared state in 1948 of Israel. If you want to hit any of those, Dr. Piper, go ahead.
Well, again, what does Trump's age have to do with anything? Nothing. What does Bibi Netanyahu have to do with the argument that I just made, that Moses had a great deal of influence on our founding fathers and the documentation is there to prove it? Does Netanyahu have anything to do with that argument? No, zero, zip. So even if these absurd claims that people are making have any validity, it doesn't address the argument. And most of them are just personal insults. They're ad hominem attacks. That's a personal insult. You're attacking the person rather than dealing with the message, dealing with the argument. That's another Socratic fallacy. And they do it over and over again. I don't know, and it's interesting. I hope people go to the Washington Times and read this particular thread because I will challenge anybody. Find a disagreement, find a post in that thread where somebody wants to challenge me and they actually do so by going to the article itself and refuting the claims made in the article, as opposed to ad hominem, personal attacks, straw men, creating something that's easy to beat that has nothing to do with the argument, or the non sequitur, the so what, who cares? And you know what, I would say this, I'll take a breath. When you're debating anybody on anything, remember this. The easiest way to respond to some of these silly arguments is just look them in the eye and say, so what? What difference does it make? Even if what you're saying is true, what does it have to do with the point I just made? And most of the time, I'm telling you people, their head will explode because they don't know what to say, because they don't understand how to engage in a logical debate as opposed to personal attacks, rabbit trails, and non sequiturs.
Yeah, there's one more I just want to give a little bit of light to here because of your response to it. So I'll read the post by somebody called Informing the Ozarks and Beyond, and then you can give your response to it. This person wrote, my Bible says that the Jews who both killed the Lord Jesus and their own prophets and have persecuted us, they please not God and are contrary to all men, forbidding us to speak to the Gentiles that they might be saved, thus heaping up their sins always. But the wrath has come upon them to the uttermost. End of quote. I'll let you give your response.
Well, I really, sometimes I'm a little snarky on these things, and I think I may have been on that one a little bit. But when somebody
you quoted a psalm. Now, if you're snarky, then the psalm is snarky. You quoted a psalm.
Well, I want to say this first, though. When this claim that the Jews killed Jesus, I've got news for you. You killed Jesus. I killed Jesus. All of us are guilty of killing Jesus because for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through Jesus Christ our Lord. If we claim to be without sin, we deceive ourselves and we make God out to be a liar. Okay? So blaming the Jews for the crucifixion of Christ is ignoring the fact that it's our sin, everyone's sin. My sin, your sin, the guy who wrote this tweet, his sin, everybody is responsible for the need for an atoning sacrifice of the Son of God. So when Christians tell me that the Jews killed Jesus, I almost want to reach through the computer screen and grab them by the scruff of the neck and say, what the heck are you talking about? Christians of all people should understand that Jesus died for all of us. and that if you claim that the Jews are responsible for Jesus's death exclusively, you're ignoring the fact that Jesus had to die for you. And had he not done so, your sins would not be atoned for. So I recoil against that.
If I may give you my fresh hot take on who killed Jesus, it's you touched on it right at the very end there. Let me get this off the screen here for just a moment. You touched on it at the very end there. I have always said that well, when I was younger, I said, what are you talking about? The Romans killed Jesus. It was Pilate who made that call, and it was the brutality of the Romans and so forth. And as I got a little bit older and started to understand scripture a little bit more, and my Catholic teachings and so forth, okay, now I see why they say that, because of what the high priest did and the whole nine yards, and Jesus was going to be a problem for the Jews with the Romans and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of it all, what I came to realize is that the person most responsible for killing Jesus Christ was Jesus Christ. He committed suicide. Literally, if you believe in the Holy Trinity, or as you often refer to it, the triune God, Jesus Christ was God. God was Jesus Christ. Both are the Holy Spirit. Jesus Christ decided that Jesus Christ must die because he was God in human form. And he could have, as God, stopped it from happening any moment he wanted to. After the first, feeling of the lash, he could have said, whoa, 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 you know what, time out, changed my mind, not doing this. He could have. He could have at any time dropped the cross and said, you're all done. He could have removed himself from the cross. He went through it all willingly. He prayed at Gethsemane and said to himself, his Father, please let this cup pass from my lips, but let your will be done, not mine. It was his will because they were one and the same, and he willingly went through it. So who killed Jesus? Jesus killed Jesus because he knew that his followers were sinners, and they needed to be absolved of those sins through his own blood, through his own body. It was a suicide. I don't blame the Jews. I don't blame the Romans. You said it. We are the reason he knew what he must do to make us all cleansed so that we can spend eternity with him and with God the Father, of course, of which they are one. So that's just been as an adult, I've grown up to kind of just frame it that way. And anybody blaming somebody else other than the man who willingly went to the cross, that's suicide, I think is misguided.
Well, spot on. You've dug a little bit deeper into the theology of the atonement than my response, which is the theology of sin. So let's take the two things that you and I have just said. My theology of sin is that we've all sinned, and we all are responsible for the sacrifice of Christ. We're all responsible because of our culpability, our sin, and the need for an atonement. We're all responsible for the death of Christ. So pointing a finger at somebody else and saying, well, you did it, ignores the fact that you've got three fingers pointing back at yourself, and you should be looking in the mirror and saying, no, Everett, you did it just as much as anybody else. That's the theology of sin, a layman's version. Your theology of the Trinity and the fact that the Father actually sacrificed his Son as an atonement for the sins of the world. And that beautiful message of God, Father and Son agreeing together. Well, I shouldn't leave the Holy Spirit out of this. The triune God, the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit agreeing together as the only God in a Trinitarian form that an atonement needs to be made for mankind. And they agree within the Trinity, within the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, that Jesus will be sacrificed for the sins of the world. That is, you put those two things together, and how anybody could start blaming the Jews for all of this is insane, because in God's providence and his sovereignty and his omniscience, at the very beginning of time, he knew that he was going to sacrifice the Son for all of mankind. He didn't come up with the idea and oops, the Jews, I guess they've got they've got Jesus and they're going to kill him. Oh, let's make that the atonement. No, this was known in the annals of time because God stands outside of time. He invented it. So he knew.
Do you think, Dr. Piper, and I apologize for the intrusion, but I want to laser focus on this or I'll forget. Do you think that God knew then, the moment that Eve took the bite, the moment that mankind sinned, the original sin, is that when he knew the plan has now shifted? I gave them free will. I told them what not to do. They did it. They are they are sinners. They are not going to be giving glory and honor to me as I had asked them to do. I'm going to have to do something to make things right by them. Did you think he conceived at that moment that I'm going to put my son on earth as one of them, as man, and I'm going to take his life in order to heal that which she just did, that they just did?
Yes. Yes, and in fact, if we go back and read the Genesis narrative, and I can't remember the specific verse right now, but at the point of Eve's fall, Adam and Eve's fall, God pronounces a curse, okay, per se, punishment for Adam and Eve. And Adam is going to toil as a farmer. He's going to have to labor for his food. Eve is going to have pain in childbirth. And then there's a reference to her offspring will crush the head of the serpent. Okay. Who's he talking about? He's talking about Jesus. Even in the book of Genesis, we get a hint, a shadow of what's coming, because the offspring of Eve is going to crush the head of the serpent. Well, yes, and even philosophically and theologically, we have to acknowledge that God is God. He's omniscient. He knows everything. How can he know everything? Well, that's because he's outside of time. He's the great I am. He's not the I was or I will be. He's the great I am, the ever-present now. So in God's sovereignty and omniscience, he knows everything because he's not bound by time. The Old Testament, the New Testament, the past, the present, and the future are all one thing for God because he invented time. He isn't bound by it. Can we get our minds wrapped around that? Not completely, but we have to understand what you've just said, and we have to understand what the Bible says. And frankly, if we could understand God completely, then it's a small God that we can fit in our small little brains. So the fact that we can't explain the Trinity thoroughly and perfectly, the fact that we don't understand the timelessness of God, his sovereignty and his omniscience, this, in my view, proves that God is bigger than us. God is more than you and I, and therefore he's worth worshiping, because if he wasn't, then he'd be an awful lot like a human being, and human beings are very bad things to kneel and bow before. They're dangerous. So, Bob, I want to go through some of those Bible verses. That guy said, well, my Bible says, and then he went off on some little rant. And I responded to him and I said, well, my Bible says, Psalm 89, my covenant with him shall endure. I will not withdraw my faithful love from him or betray my faithfulness. I will not violate my covenant or change what my lips have said. Once and for all, I have sworn an oath by my holiness, says God, I will not lie to David. His offspring will continue forever. Psalm 89 seems pretty clear to me that God is saying, I will not break my word. Your offspring shall endure, continue forever. And then he says in Jeremiah 31 verses 35 and 36, this is what the Lord says, the one who gives the sun for light by day and has fixed the order of the moon and stars for light by night, who stirs up the sea and makes its waves roar, the Lord of armies is his name. If the fixed order departs before me, this is the Lord's declaration. Only then will Israel's descendants cease to be a nation forever. So essentially, until the stars fall from the sky and the sun and the moon cease to give off light and the ocean stops roaring, in other words, the ocean goes dry, the Lord declares this, until all this happens, Israel's descendants will not cease to be a nation forever. Romans, people will say, well, that's Old Testament. The book of Romans, the book of Galatians, replacement theology. God has replaced his covenant with the Jews by adding in the Gentiles. Christianity is the replacement of all those Old Testament prophecies. Really? Well, then why did the Apostle Paul say in Romans chapter 11, has God rejected his people? Absolutely not. Do not boast that you are better than the branches. You do not sustain the root, but the root sustains you. That seems to be a pretty clear statement to those that are imbibing replacement theology today, supersessionism, and suggesting that somehow the church is the replacement of Israel. Is Christianity the fulfillment of these Old Testament prophecies? Absolutely. Is Christianity the fulfillment of God's covenant with the Jews? Absolutely. But does that mean that the old promises that God made to the Jews are now null and void? No, two things can be true at the same time.
Absolutely.
The promises that he's made to Israel and the Jews are true, and they will last forever. And the promises that he makes to you and I, that if we confess our sins, he's faithful and just to forgive us of our sins and to cleanse us of all unrighteousness, that if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our heart that God has raised him from the dead, you shall be saved. Those things can be true at the same time as the Psalms and Jeremiah and the other declarations in Deuteronomy, in Leviticus, in the prophets, all the way up to the New Testament. They can all be true at the same time. Two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah, that's was such a great response, and I love that you morphed into the New Testament too to answer those critics and to answer those statements. And I think you just proved the point. And all of those straw man arguments, beating up those scarecrows that could not fight back, just exposed as what they are. So I salute you for your courage and your willingness, because I know what a massive role, your faith plays in your life, and your faith in Jesus, and your belief in Jesus, and your belief in his divinity and his power to forgive, and all the rest. Your defense of Israel against those, and there are, and Dr. Piper, you and I have talked about this before, maybe a little bit in passing, but just the Christ the King crowd, Christ is King crowd, I should say, which kind of was, I don't know to say was born of Fuentes and Candace Owens, but they're the ones who, the anti-Israel zealots, are the ones that respond to everything about Israel that they don't like with Christ is King, Christ is King, kind of almost trolling Jews, because, Christ is King, you're not, you don't take him as king, so therefore you are less than and you deserve whatever happens to you, kind of thing. And I hate that, because I believe Christ is the King of Kings. I believe he is the only king. But when they say it and use it as a cudgel or a way to, to insult or slur Jews, that's what I have a problem with. Christ is king. Christ is a Jew, not just was, but Christ is a Jew. And the New Testament does not replace the Old Testament. It builds upon it, and it does, as you say, fulfill prophecy.
Years ago, Bob, I was driving through Tulsa, and my son, who was in college at the time, called me. And I can't remember the quote, but essentially he was, as college students do, he was wrestling with some various different things that he was learning in classes, theology classes, Bible classes, because he attended a Christian college. He said, Dad, how do you reconcile the God of the Old Testament with the God of the New? A harsh and judgmental God of the Old Testament versus the love and sacrifice of Christ in the New Testament. And I said to him, his name's Jacob, we nicknamed him Kobe. I said, Kobe, we don't worship two gods, we worship one. The God of the Old Testament is the same God of the New Testament. I said, Jesus is God, right? Jesus is, in my language, I use it on your show all the time, the second person of the triune God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Jesus is God. Do we agree on that? He said, sure, I agree that Jesus is God. Then if Jesus is God, he's just as much the inspiration and author of the Old Testament as he is the New, right? So you can't have this attitude that somehow the Old Testament God is different than the New Testament God. Are they two different messages? Sure. I'm sure there are times when you've given different messages that build upon one another to your children and your family.
Mhm.
That doesn't make you two different dads. It means that you wanted to communicate something on day one, and you wanted to add to what you had communicated on day one later on in the kid's life by adding a different and a different message to the things that you'd already taught him earlier in his life. And we actually see this in the New Testament. We see reference that Jesus is the same God that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. If you go to the book of Jude, if I remember correctly, it talks about Jesus judging Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, I've read the Bible my whole life, and it was just the last couple of years I caught that passage. It says Jesus judged Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, what more do we need? It's the God of the Old Testament that rained down fire and brimstone on Sodom and Gomorrah. That was Jesus who was doing that judgment. So the point of my story about my son is we don't worship two gods. We worship one. The God of the Old Testament is the same God as the New Testament, and Jesus in the New Testament is the same God that actually was judgmental even in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in the Old. And then if we go to the book of Revelation, at the end of days, when we all enter into eternity, as Revelation talks about, we're told that Jesus sits around, has a great big kumbaya group hug with us. No, Jesus is the judge at the end of days. So again, the secular mind, the postmodern version of Christianity, the deconstructed Christianity that we have to wrestle with today is anything but biblical, because essentially it's not a monotheistic discussion we're having any longer. It's a polytheistic discussion, because they assume that somehow the Old Testament God is different than the New Testament God, and they start ripping the Bible apart, not recognizing it's a consistent narrative. It's a communication from one God and one God only, and we need to read it that way.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the part about Jesus being the ultimate judge, because that's the entirety of faith. He will come again, and he will judge. And this is in the Nicene Creed. He will, in Catholic Church, he will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead. So just because you died off before he got here doesn't mean you're scot-free. He will, if you are dead and and he judges you to have been less than what you were supposed to be in life, which is completely devoted to him, devoted to his Father, devoted to God, and so on and so forth, your judgment may make you fall short of being, in the glory of God, with the glory of God for all eternity. So that is what we believe. He is not, he is indeed the ultimate judge. It's not all hugs and kisses. It is, what did you do? How did you do it? Did you stay loyal to God? Did you atone for your sins? Did you truly, truly, do you deserve, to be absolved of your sins because of true repentance for them? Did you do those things? And if you did do those things, he may judge you favorably, and away you go, and to the heavens. So that is what it is. And excuse me, a lot of these people who are they may call themselves believers, but they're not true believers. They're just not. And they pick and choose which parts of the Bible they want to believe, which parts of their faith, whether it be, the church, the Catholic Church, or the Protestant Church, or whatever it is. They pick and choose what they feel like is going to make them, be able to live their life more comfortably.
And I'm going to, when you said that many of these people making these claims are not true believers, I suspect that. I suspect that. And my initial reaction is I agree with you. And when they say Christ is king, part of me wants to say, be careful what you wish for. Be careful what you wish for, because Christ is king, and he will judge the living and the dead at the end of days. And he returns as a warrior on a white horse. He returns as the judge of all humanity. So if you're going to say Christ is king, recognize that what Christ is communicating in all of Scripture needs to be adhered to. And you know what? Even if I'm wrong on throwing a bone to the Jews, even if I'm wrong on reading Jeremiah and the Psalms and the book of Romans and concluding that God's promise to the Jews is forever and it will not be broken, even if I'm wrong on that, I'd rather be wrong by assuming those verses are what they are and say what they say and mean what they mean. I'd rather be wrong by missing some nuance here if I'm missing it. I'd rather be standing in front of my judge and my Savior Jesus Christ being wrong about that and saying, oh, I didn't realize that there was a different twist on those verses. I was just reading them for what they were. I would rather be saying that than shouting Christ is King and I hate the Jews.
Yeah, and those people, those Christ the King, Christ is King people that I talk about again, and I don't want to speak ill of all of them. Many of them are just saying it because they believe these are the real believers, the true believers, not the ones who say it thinking that's going to get me out of being in Dutch with God. If I say Christ is King, Christ is the King of Kings, that means, hey, we were told that if you take me as your Savior, if you take me and believe that I'm the Son of God and that I am the King of Kings, then you're saved. They kind of figure all the other stuff I do with my life is out the window. If I say, hey, I believe, I said Christ is King, and so I'm clean, right? They think that. Many of them think that. The true believers obviously understand it differently, but they think this just gets me out of hot water. It's that deathbed conversion. It's like, you know what? As I'm taking my final breath, I really do believe that whole thing. Jesus, you were King and our King, and can I come up? That's what a lot of these people are doing. Maybe not on their deathbeds, but.
I was just this last word. I was listening. I was trying to figure out who Nick Fuentes was back when Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson were platforming him. Who is?
I was just about to ask you about them. That's going to be our last question. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Well, I listened to enough of a podcast of one of Fuentes' podcasts to figure out who he was, and it was scary because if you didn't know that this guy is a Nazi. He idolizes Hitler. He thinks Hitler is really cool, quote unquote, that he memorializes Joseph Stalin's birthday, that he is an evil man, a very hateful man, a very vulgar and vile man, and that he hates Jews. If you didn't know all that, this podcast was basically a little sermonette on the book of Galatians out of the New Testament. And he was using the book of Galatians to justify his antipathy for the Jews. And the fact that the old covenant with the Jews has been replaced by Christianity, by the church. If you didn't know all the garbage, all the baggage that this guy brings with him, you would have thought, this guy must really be a believer because he's got the book of Galatians down. All right. The bottom line is this. Paul tells Timothy that many people will come in the end times that will be preaching a different gospel. They'll be saying things that are very confusing and they'll lead the church astray. Be very careful. Very careful. And how can we be careful? To not just listen to this one clip of Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens or Nick Fuentes and buy it. We're careful because we measure all of what's being said by the entirety of Scripture and not just little snippets out of Galatians or little snippets out of Romans or little snippets out of whatever. You read a book in its entirety. You read it in context. And when you start taking it out of context and ignoring what it has said before and what it's building upon, you're going to get it wrong. And Fuentes clearly does.
Yeah, well, he's one of the false prophets that we hear about. They will take, as you said, a few words, take it out of context, and then they will sound holy. They will sound like, wow, this is a person to listen to. This is a person to follow, which is what prophets want, is for you to follow them. And it's a false prophet using, that out of context analysis or whatever you want to call it of the Bible, his interpretation of the words, and it reels people in, and it's evil. It's the wolf putting on the sheep's. Yeah, I'm one of you. Look
Absolutely.
At me. It's just, it is what it is, and I'm glad you explained that. Only got a couple of minutes left here, but I just wanted to ask you about Candace. She's front and center again in part. In fact, I'll show this, much to my chagrin, but this is a Candace Owens tweet and post. Can I make it all the way bigger there? Maybe. Yeah, maybe you can see that. It's a picture of her with Charlie, and it says, and this is from 2 days ago, "One more fight, Charlie. I don't fear these demons. We will win." She's speaking out right now because of the day 3 today, day 4 on Thursday, and 5 on Friday of the 5-day evidentiary hearing for Tyler Robinson. And the prosecution has got to prove that they have a reason to have a trial going forward, which of course they have done. I don't know how closely you've watched it through 3 days, Dr. Piper, but Candace Owens is still virtually everything she has said for the last 10 months since Charlie was murdered. And she began one of the biggest grafts in history, or grifts, if you will. She has added just thousands of followers every month, to the point where she's got 5 or 6 million people following her, because people like conspiracy theories, and they like to listen, and they like to dive into these things. It's an addiction for a lot of people, and she knows that, and so she is willing to do anything and everything. It's one of the most evil things that I've ever seen, to smear Erica Kirk, the Kirk family, the Turning Point family that Charlie had built, virtually everybody, to Israel, especially Israel, to France, the French military. I mean, everybody has had a role in the murder of Charlie Kirk, except Tyler Robinson, whom she said just a few days ago never stepped foot on the entire UVU campus. And through 3 days that I've seen, there have been multiple videos of him on campus that day. I mean, I guess it's a long question for a short answer. You're watching this. What is your impression of what you have seen so far? And do you think this will stop the conspiracies from the likes of Tucker and Candace and others?
I don't know if it'll stop or not, because people are gullible and they're believing this nonsense. But if your discernment, if your spirit, okay, I'm speaking to Christians right now, and maybe even non-Christians who have common sense, because God in his common grace does give everyone a sense of right and wrong. We're told that in the first chapter of Romans. Paul says that the truth of God is written on every human heart. So you have to be squelching that truth, that common sense, your conscience, to buy this nonsense that Candace is spewing. Because why? It's hateful. Anybody who would treat Erica Kirk the way Candace Owens has treated Erica Kirk and Charlie Kirk's children is an evil human being. It's just wrong. I don't care what else you say about Candace Owens. She has shown her true colors to be an evil human being by being so vindictive and dishonest, trolling Erica Kirk to the point of absurdity, making these false accusations about her, mocking her, and then belittling by default her husband's assassination, by deflecting to all these conspiracies that the French did it, the Jews did it. It always comes back to the Jews. If the French did it, it must have been French Jews that did it. So she's always looking for a Jew behind every bush to justify the thing that she's accusing of taking place at the time. Andrew, let's see, who was it? Andrew, he wrote this. Maybe you saw it. Andrew Colvett.
Andrew Colvett, yeah.
He wrote this. I saw it just today. And I'm going to read the whole thing. And I know your time's short, but I'm going to read this tweet.
All right, go ahead. I think I read it, but let's let the audience hear this.
People need to hear this. Okay. Candace, you and Charlie were not friends. He managed you. He kept things light and polite so you wouldn't turn on the organization. Show me any proof of genuine friendship from the last 12 months of his life, from the last 18 months, from the last 24 months, not some 2018 text, something recent. You gave him anxiety wherever you called or whenever you called or texted, demanding to speak at our events. He made me and Justin deal with you and with George. That is why when you tried to hire me in February of 2024 for PR, I agreed to go along with it against my better judgment, because Charlie asked me to keep a close eye on you and to protect the organization from you. The publicist I tried to hire to run point prayed about it and left and felt that the Lord told her a firm no. And so I ultimately declined. This is your central foundational lie. You were not his friend. You are not his defender. You were the tormentor. And now you torment his wife and the organization he built. Candace, you are a fraud. Now, he couldn't have said it any better. I couldn't say it any better. The woman is a fraud. And for anybody that still gives her any credibility, look at the number of times she's made a claim. She provides no evidence. She says, I'm just asking questions. She doesn't apologize for the claim or say, I was absolutely wrong. I need to correct myself. I need to apologize for leading everybody astray. How many times has she done that? She's never apologized. She's never said she was wrong, even though time and time and time again, she says something that isn't true. She says, click on my show tomorrow to learn what the truth is about this conspiracy that I'm fielding right now. And then she keeps building her audience and making a boatload of money off the lie.
All about profit. It's her 30 pieces of silver.
And Tucker isn't any better right now. And
no, he's not.
On your show at one time, I tried to defend him a little bit back in the day. And I remember. You were wrong. Excuse me. You were right. You were right. And I was wrong. Because I didn't see it for what it was at the time, and you all had already called it for what it was.
Yeah, I saw him steering off the rails. There were too many incidents, but he was interspersing those moments with moments of what we had come to know him as prior to that. Back in his Fox News days, for example. So we saw it, but that's neither here nor there. Here's one thing I would recommend in closing, Dr. Piper. I'm glad you found Andrew Colvett there. I'm going to read this one to you, because it's the setup, and I bet as soon as we stop the cameras here, you'll click and you'll watch the thread of videos that comes along with this. And I want everybody else to consider doing the same thing. So I'm going to bring this up on the screen. I'm going to enlarge this so that we're both gone, just so you can read this. There is an account called Data Republican, okay? And I watched this yesterday. Data Republican has a thread on Candace Owens, on Erica Kirk, in her own words. All right, so I'll read this short little setup to the videos. I won't play the videos, we don't have time. Candace, yesterday, pre-spun a report she hadn't read, calling it Zionist. The report is Candace's own show. It doesn't accuse her of anything. Her own footage does that. Before the investigation, Candace spent 40 episodes defending Erica Kirk. She called her, quote, genuinely such a nice person, end quote. She swore that nobody, quote, outside of my husband and Erica Kirk had the power to shut her up. She told her audience she would stop if Erica asked. Well, Erica asked her to stop. Candace didn't stop. She couldn't stop. The investigation had become her primary subscription product. So she revoked Erica's authority the only way she could, by making Erica untrustworthy. No new evidence appeared between the praise and the accusations, just a new business need. And this business need may very well end up in tragedy. Here is Candace and her audience in their own words. As always, patience as I pull together the thread. I watched these yesterday. These are all Candace's words, and everything that she has said contradicting everything else that she had said. There's 2, there's 3, there's 4, there's 5, there's 6, there's 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 tweets in this thread. Some of them articles, most of them actual footage of the Candace Owens show. And I just invite everybody to watch that, listen to that, understand what evil looks like, at its core, which is what Candace Owens really is, especially as Tyler Robinson begins facing the wheels of justice through these evidentiary hearings, and eventually, what is supposed to happen is going to happen. But those who are enriching themselves along the way by making the torment of a widow and her family and Charlie's family and millions of people impacted by Charlie Kirk, including yours truly, making the torment that much worse by attacking the victims and the victims' families is one of the most grotesque things you'll ever see.
I agree.
And I highly advise people to watch those and read those and understand exactly what really is going on. Last thought?
You're spot on, Bob. Bottom line, I'm repeating myself, but also quoting you. Candace Owens is evil. What she's doing is just unmitigated evil. the way she's attacking the legacy of Charlie Kirk. She doesn't care about Charlie Kirk's legacy, his organization that he built and its mission and the good work that it was doing for America. She doesn't care. She's trashing all of that. She's undermining all of that. But even worse is her maligning, her gossip, her mean-spirited attack of Erica Kirk, and by default, the children of Charlie Kirk. How anybody can take this woman seriously anymore after watching her do this, I don't know. And frankly, if anybody listening right now is tempted to continue to pay attention to Candace Owens, you need to wake up and you need to pay attention that this woman is a blatant liar, she's a deceiver, and she's a divisive spirit. And the Bible speaks against all of this. And you should distance yourself from her now, because you're going to be guilty by default in participating with her evil, with her sin, if you don't.
Is there a biblical phrase that goes something like, by their works ye shall know them? Something like that. By her works you shall know her. Watch her works and listen to them, and you will know who she is and what she is. Dr. Piper, really enlightening episode today. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Great stuff.
All right. You take care, Bob.
You too, sir. Thank you. There you go.
Bye-bye.
Dr. Everett Piper, bringing it home for us. That's a keeper. You shall see this episode again sometime in a best of, when I've got another show to do, or I've got something else going on, or something happens and I need to put together a show on a pre-record. I promise you, you'll see this one probably a few times. Great stuff from Dr. Everett Piper. All right. Sorry about that. I had the camera off there while I gave that to you. So hold on a second. Well, let's quiet the rest of that down there. Okay, everybody. So we're way late. Obviously, it's 20 minutes past our normal time, but I'm not going to close here on this Free-for-All Friday without telling you about what's coming Monday. I gave you this yesterday, and there's a slight edit to this that I haven't made yet in terms of the graphic, but I want you to know what's happening on Monday. The Unfiltered Data Center panel discussion. As you know, we have talked about data centers for a long time, as it's one of the top issues in the state. It's going to be a big issue in the general election, in the governor's race. It's just a massive issue nationwide, and I find myself really, really torn. I hear some very good arguments for the need for data center expansion in terms of the global competition. And I find myself very, very much in line with people who are saying we cannot do this to people and in their neighborhoods and our resources and so forth. I don't know really where I am. So I wanted to commission a panel and put together a conversation here between people who are very much pro and very much opposed to data center proliferation and expansion. So that's what we have. So Monday morning, we're going to have a conservative discussion. These are all conservatives. Okay, because I don't care what the left thinks. These are conservatives who disagree on this issue. And that's what I want to kind of get to the bottom of. And I know it'll be a good debate and discussion, because we're all going to be, even-handed and simple-minded. That's very, very poorly worded. Excuse me. Civil-minded in our discussion. And so on the pro side, you're going to hear from Tom Zawistowski. You're going to hear from Jeff Mahalik. You're going to hear from Greg Lawson. He's from the Buckeye Institute. And on the opposite side, the opponents of this massive data center expansion, Marcel Sturbich, although he's only going to be here for a half an hour of the conversation Monday. The full show is going to be about this for 2 hours. But Marcel is only going to be able to be with us due to a schedule conflict for a half an hour. And then we're going to have John Mara, who's the mayor of Timberlake, and we're going to have Stephanie Stock from OAMF. Filling in for Marcel when he steps away is going to be Eric, and I lost his last name. Marcel introduced me to him, but we're going to have somebody who's going to step in who's a hugely influential opponent of the data center expansion. So he is going to come on and tell us all about it. I'm very much looking forward to his participation. So it's kind of be 4 on 3, but not really. It's just going to be a matter of, like I said, replacing one of our panelists with somebody else at the time that they're available. So that's a huge conversation that's going to be happening. We're going to talk about all aspects of the data center expansion issue, and I think it's going to be very eye-opening. So don't miss that one. Make sure you join us on Monday. for that very, very important show. As for today, thank you to Dr. Everett Piper. Thanks to all of the chatters that made the conversation really, really good today. Sorry about the troll that was in there while we were live, but that's how it works sometimes. But thank you, everybody. As always, be well, be safe. Closing this strong, aren't I? Simple-minded instead of civil-minded. Be well, be safe, and stay free. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.